The NBA offseason might feel like it's dragging, but we're creeping closer and closer to the return of real basketball. And that means it's time to start paying attention to all the little storylines bubbling under the surface, especially the ones that could impact the Boston Celtics. While the news out of Boston has been relatively quiet over the past few days, things around the league are heating up in subtle but significant ways. And yes, even though the Celtics haven't made any big moves lately, the ripple effect from other teams might end up shaping how Brad Stevens and company approach the next phase of roster building. Let's start with something that's catching eyes in Philadelphia, and it has the potential to shake things up in more ways than one. Kelly Oubre Jr. dropped a pretty cryptic message on Instagram that seemed to hint at dissatisfaction with his current situation. "I love Philly, but the love doesn't seem to be reciprocated. What happened to this place?" That's a real quote. And yes, it's vintage NBA drama, using social media to send a message without saying too much. Oubre made it clear he feels disrespected, pointing to injuries he's played through and the criticism he's received over his shooting percentages. And for all the noise around him, it's hard to ignore what he represents in terms of value. An expiring deal worth around $8 million is nothing to scoff at, especially for a team like Boston that could use flexibility more than flash. Philly's trying to cut costs. That's not a secret. As a second-apron team, they're extremely limited in the kind of deals they can pull off. And all signs point to them trying to make space to bring in Quentin Grimes, who's a restricted free agent and just had a major breakout stretch. But the Sixers can't pay everyone, and that's where guys like Oubre become expendable. Now, does Kelly Oubre make sense for the Celtics? From a financial standpoint, yes. From a basketball standpoint, that's where the debate starts. Oubre's not exactly a defensive ace, and his role as an offensive contributor is inconsistent, to put it mildly. He's flashy. He puts up numbers here and there, but there's always been a question of fit and impact, especially on teams with real championship aspirations. Still, if Boston is looking to shed a bit of salary and add a player on a short-term, low-risk deal, it's not the craziest idea. One hypothetical that's been floated is a swap involving Sam Hauser. And sure, on paper, a Hauser for Oubre deal technically works. Boston would save a bit of money this year, just over $1.5 million, and it might even push them under the first apron. But is that worth it? Honestly, probably not. Hauser's value, especially as a sharpshooter in a league that continues to crave spacing, could rise significantly by midseason. And even if he didn't show up big in the playoffs, his skill set is still rare and tradable. Oubre, on the other hand, has always been more of a fantasy darling than a consistent NBA difference maker. So from a Celtics perspective, that kind of move feels like a lateral step at best, or a small downgrade. While we're talking about Philly and restricted free agents, let's look at the broader picture, because Oubre's situation is tied directly to the Grimes decision. Quentin Grimes was one of the more underrated breakout stories of the second half of last season. With the Sixers dealing with injuries across the board, from Embiid to Maxey and beyond, Grimes stepped into a bigger role and made the most of it. In the final 25 games of the season, the guy averaged 25 points, 5 boards, and 5 assists per game. That's a major leap, especially for someone who bounced around from New York to Detroit and even had a short stint in Dallas. And now Philly has a tough decision to make. How much do you pay a guy whose breakout came during a stretch of desperation minutes? It's a question being asked all over the league this offseason. Look at Cam Thomas in Brooklyn, signed his qualifying offer for just $6 million. Meanwhile, Josh Giddey landed a 4-year, $100 million deal with Chicago. That's $25 million per year for a guy whose value, depending on who you ask, ranges from future star to massive overpay. The Bulls and Giddey reportedly had a pretty wide gap in their initial asks. The Giddey camp wanted $30 million a year. The Bulls were aiming closer to 20, and they settled in the middle. But that whole negotiation highlights just how volatile restricted free agency can be. If Grimes' camp is looking at Giddey and Thomas as comparables, then Philly might be staring down a $15 to $17 million per year price tag. That's tough for a team that's already pressed up against the financial ceiling. And again, every dollar they commit to a young and proven player is a dollar they can't use to bring in more proven depth. So now, back to Oubre. His departure becomes not just a possibility, but a near inevitability if Philly decides Grimes is the future. Meanwhile, over in Golden State, another situation is unfolding that could impact the Celtics more indirectly, but it's worth tracking. Jonathan Kuminga and the Warriors are locked in a standoff. The expectation is that he'll eventually sign the qualifying offer, but until he does, everything is frozen. And you know who's sitting in that freeze zone? Al Horford. The veteran big man, from all accounts, has been waiting to sign with the Warriors. A 2-year deal seems likely, probably a 1+1 structure, maybe around $11 million per year. But the Warriors haven't made a single move yet this offseason. Not one. And with the calendar ticking into September, it's starting to feel like Golden State is paralyzed. Now, is Horford the same guy he was 5 years ago? No. But in a limited role, say 25 minutes a night, not on back-to-backs, he can still provide solid minutes and veteran leadership. And for a Warriors team whose championship window is closing fast, bringing in someone with that kind of playoff experience could be a stabilizing force. The problem? They need clarity on Kuminga before they can lock in any other pieces. And until that happens, Horford's stuck in limbo. It's not an ideal spot for a player his age, especially one who could be helping a contender right now. It's a reminder of how delicate roster construction can be at this point in the offseason, and how one holdout can cause a ripple effect across multiple teams. Back in Boston, the front office continues to operate with a level of competency that fans should appreciate more. No, not every contract handed out was perfect. The Jaylen Brown Supermax? That sparked plenty of debate. But the moves for Porzingis and Jrue Holiday 2 years ago, those laid the groundwork for the championship run the Celtics just completed. And now they're in a spot where their core is intact, the bench is relatively deep, and they have just enough financial flexibility to tweak things if needed. Compared to what's going on in Philly and Golden State, Boston looks like a model of stability. And if you needed a reminder of how strong the Celtics core really is, just look at the numbers. Since 2018, no team has won more playoff games than the Boston Celtics. 72 playoff wins. Let that sink in. The Nuggets have 51. The Bucks, 45. Even the Golden State Warriors, with their dynasty and all, have 57. 72 playoff wins in 6 seasons. That's not just consistency, that's dominance. It's easy to take it for granted when it feels like you're always in the mix, but this team has been knocking on the door of greatness for a while. A finals appearance, multiple Eastern Conference finals, and now a championship. That kind of sustained excellence is rare in the modern NBA. And still, the narrative around Tatum and Brown sometimes feels weirdly negative. People love to nitpick. Tatum doesn't show up in big moments. Brown can't dribble with his left, whatever. But at the end of the day, these two have led a team to more postseason success than anyone else in the league over the past 6 years. And now they've got the ring to prove it. There's no asterisk on this championship. They didn't pick who they played. They beat everyone put in front of them, and they did it convincingly. So if people want to downplay the title because the East was weak or because the finals weren't competitive, that's on them. The Celtics did their job. While the Celtics have the luxury of starting their season from a place of strength, the rest of the league, and particularly the Eastern Conference, is full of teams desperately trying to figure themselves out. That chaos might end up working in Boston's favor, but it also creates new variables for a front office that's always thinking a few steps ahead. And when you look around, there are a few names that keep popping up in trade rumors or speculative scenarios. Guys like Anthony Simons, Sam Hauser, and even Xavier Tillman. All players who could either be used to strengthen the rotation or be moved to increase future flexibility. What makes this part of the offseason so interesting is that we're no longer talking about blockbuster deals. We're talking about fine-tuning, about identifying where the gaps might appear mid-season and setting yourself up to respond. Let's start with Simons. He's an interesting case because he has value, but it's complicated by his contract. He's making around $27 million a year, and that's not something the Celtics are going to be willing to absorb long-term unless he turns into a high-level contributor right away. And even then, it would require a significant reshuffle. Simons is talented, no doubt about it. but he's also a guy who needs the ball in his hands. And on a team with Jason Tatum, Jaylen Brown, and Drew Holiday already in place, there's just not a lot of usage to go around. So unless Boston is envisioning a scenario where Simons becomes a sixth-man scorer off the bench, this might just be a short-term rental. And if he's expecting a long-term deal near that same salary number, it's probably not happening in Boston. That's why Sam Hauser might end up being more valuable than people realize. He's already under contract for a team-friendly number, and his skill set, high-efficiency three-point shooting, off-ball movement, and the ability to stay within his role is exactly what contenders crave. He's not flashy. He's not someone you build an offense around. But when you already have stars, you need players like Hauser who can complement them without demanding touches. And come mid-season, when teams are scrambling to add shooters before the playoff push, Hauser could easily become one of the more sought-after role players on the trade market. The smart move? Hold on to him unless someone overpays. Then there's Xavier Tillman, who's quietly becoming a bit of a wild card in all of this. He's not going to be headlining any trade packages, but he could become a swing piece depending on how he performs early in the season. Last year was rocky. There was off-the-court stuff, injuries, and inconsistent play. But there's a reason Boston took a flyer on him. Tillman has the tools to be a solid rotational big. He's a decent rebounder, he defends well in space, and he can make quick decisions with the ball. If he can give Boston reliable minutes as a backup five, it takes a lot of pressure off the need to add another center. And that ties directly into the conversation about Neemias Queta. The Queta situation might end up being one of the most important storylines heading into camp. If he proves that he can handle the role of backup center, or at least be part of a platoon, it frees the Celtics to think more creatively about the rest of the roster. Instead of burning resources chasing a big, they can invest in other areas, perimeter defense, playmaking, or even just depth insurance for the inevitable injuries. And this is where things get really interesting, because as much as Boston's roster looks complete right now, every season brings surprises. Somebody gets hurt. Somebody breaks out. Somebody falls off. The teams that win titles are the ones that adapt. One of the luxuries Boston has right now is time. They don't need to rush anything. If someone like Simons becomes available and the price drops, they could be opportunistic. If Hauser gets hot and his value spikes, they can explore options. If Tillman or Queta start showing real growth, they can shift priorities. That kind of flexibility is what separates elite front offices from reactive ones. And Brad Stevens has earned the benefit of the doubt at this point. He's not chasing names, he's building rosters. But even with all that in place, it's hard to ignore how much external noise still surrounds the Celtics, especially when it comes to their stars. The NBA loves a good narrative, and for whatever reason, Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown remain lightning rods. Take the recent top 100-player list that came out. Tatum was ranked 10th, behind guys like Jalen Brunson, Donovan Mitchell, and Anthony Edwards. Now look, those are great players. No one's saying they're scrubs. But are we really still pretending Tatum isn't in the top 5 conversation? He plays elite two-way basketball. He's consistently in the MVP discussion, and he's already led a team to the finals twice, winning once. He's not flashy like LUKA. He doesn't have the media machine behind him like some of the younger names. But what he does have is results. And Jaylen Brown? He gets even less respect. People love to point out the flaws, the left hand, the turnovers, the quiet stretches. But Brown's also the guy who drops 27, 7, and 3 when Tatum is out. He's the guy who defends the other team's best wing every night. And now, he's an NBA champion. That matters. You don't luck your way into a title. You have to be consistent, durable, and impactful across 4 playoff rounds. Brown was all of that and more. And still, the conversations are about what he can't do instead of what he does every night. Let's talk numbers again, because the numbers don't lie. Since Tatum and Brown entered the league, the Celtics have been a playoff juggernaut. More wins than the Bucks. More wins than the Nuggets. More wins than the Warriors. This isn't some feel-good story about a young core with potential. This is a proven group that has already reached the top of the mountain, and they're still in their primes. Most teams would kill for one playoff run like what the Celtics have done 3 or 4 times now. But because they didn't win every time, it somehow gets framed as a failure? That's absurd. But before we continue, please remember to subscribe to the channel and give the video a like. Your support helps us keep bringing you the latest news about the Boston Celtics. Feel free to share your thoughts on the news in the comments as well. The NBA world is in absolute disbelief tonight as whispers from multiple sources suggest a seismic shift in the league. LUKA DONČIĆ, the Slovenian sensation, may be leaving the Los Angeles Lakers. Rumors are flying that DONČIĆ has already put pen to paper in a deal with none other than the Boston Celtics, sending shockwaves from coast to coast. LUKA, who has been nothing short of a phenomenon since entering the league, has dominated headlines with his jaw-dropping performances, insane stats, and clutch moments. Fans have speculated endlessly about his future, but no one expected this level of drama. The Lakers, who built their roster around LeBron James and Anthony Davis, are reportedly scrambling to process the potential loss of one of the game's brightest stars. Sources close to the situation hint that negotiations have been fast and furious, with the Celtics pulling out all stops to make a blockbuster move that could redefine the Eastern Conference landscape. Boston fans, meanwhile, are practically in euphoria at the mere suggestion that DONČIĆ could don the green and white. The Celtics have long been chasing the kind of game-changing talent that can elevate a championship contender to a dynasty-level team, and LUKA fits the bill perfectly. Analysts are already speculating how his dynamic style, the fearless drives, pinpoint shooting, and unshakable court vision would mesh with Jason Tatum and Jaylen Brown. Could this be the missing piece for Boston to finally reclaim the Eastern throne? While no official announcement has been made, the NBA rumor mill is running at full speed. Social media has exploded with reactions ranging from shock to excitement, as fans debate what this means for both franchises. Lakers supporters are understandably panicked, questioning the future without their young superstar, while Celtics fans are imagining a lineup that might be unstoppable on both ends of the court. If confirmed, this would go down as one of the most jaw-dropping moves in modern NBA history. A superstar leaving the bright lights of Los Angeles for Boston, turning the Eastern Conference into a battleground no one saw coming. For now, all eyes are on the league offices as the basketball world waits with bated breath to see if this rumor will officially become reality. One thing is certain. If DONČIČ truly signs with the Celtics, the NBA landscape will never look the same again. That's it for this update. If you enjoyed the video and want to keep receiving exclusive news about the Boston Celtics, please subscribe to our channel and give the video a like. We always appreciate your comments and opinions. See you in the next video.